Hello. So today we're going to draw a here, and the reason for that is many people have a little bit of a hard time when they draw here because it's apparently a complex part of the body, although in reality if you do start to understand the structure of the ear, is actually not so difficult to draw. It's good to have a reference image, as you can see right here, and you can have any reference. If you're really interested in this reference, I can provide it to you. You just let me know. But one thing good to do is to have a printout of the reference, and then you can actually, I suggest often to draw on top of the ear, so you can define very easily the main shapes of the ear. When we draw, we need to be really aware of the main the size of the paper, in the sense of the vertical and the horizontal line. Like in a paper, as you know, it's a rectangle like this. You always need to be aware of this line and this line, because many things are defined, angles, many lines are defined by the angles in relationship to this vertical and horizontal line. And so for instance, if you have in this case, if you draw the ear, let's say if I draw a line like this line has a relationship in accordance with the vertical or horizontal line. So let me erase the rectangle for now. We don't need it. And as I said, you can draw on top of the paper, the reference. So what I usually like to do is to enclose the ear in some sort of a rectangle. It's a bit hard to see, but so these when I'm going to draw the ear, I'm going to construct this rectangle so I can easily know where the shapes are going. And then you can define this a little stronger, these major lines. Like this part, you can see often this line is also drawn. And then you have this part right here, and then you have this, and this turns again like that. Then we have the outer shape, and then we have what is called the lobe. Every ear is a little bit different, but more or less the structure is always the same. So some people have a bigger lobe, some people have a very small lobe. In this case, it's a reasonable size lobe. And there is this line right here. This part is going to be in the dark, and then you have some sort of curve here. So this will help you more or less to draw a little bit easier the ear. And we can start to draw it. So the first thing I'm going to do is to draw lines, so I will know where the ear goes. And then we're gonna have the rectangle I was talking about. So this is an exercise of observation. Doesn't have to be perfect. The ear does not have to be perfect, otherwise there is no reason to draw it. We can just have it print. But the idea is to simply understand how the structure of the ear is in order to draw it. So first thing, we have this part which attaches to the head, and then here it will curve. More or less around here you have the lobe. This part curve, and it goes like that. Then you have this part which again turn around, In this case, just a side note, I've chosen a photograph as a reference, but you can choose anything. As a matter of fact, what I usually recommend is people to use material which is being drawn by other people. So in other words, like either clip art or artistical. So what is drawn by people can be complex or more simple, like clip art is a very simple image reference. And then there are more complex things, like for instance in this case a ear, which can be drawn by an artist, and it can be a very complicated drawing. So it can be from simple to complicated. So it depends on your level. My suggestion is to start with the simple ear that you can find in a clip art, and then you work your way up in a more complicated ear drawn by somebody until you get to a photograph. Photograph is a little more complex because it has so many shades and values, which is complicated to see shapes. It's very easy to get lost into details. In this case I started with the photograph. Maybe another time we do a clip art ear. So we continue. We draw this part right here, which turn around until right there, more or less. As I said, it does not have to be perfect. This turn, and then there is this part right here, and then you have this element, which, by the way, this element corresponds to the palpebra of the eyes, the eyelids, which we usually close in order to sleep. So the same thing with this element, we can push in order not to hear the sound. So it's the same thing. So it will turn like this, and then there is this part right there. Then it turn around like that. Maybe it can be more extreme, it's up to you. Before you draw, it's good to warm up a little bit so the lines comes a little more easy. In anything, it's always good to warm up before you do anything. And this is more or less already, we have the shape of the ear. And now we can actually start to commit a little bit, make the lines a little stronger, and actually start to shade a little bit. So this is gonna be a little bit in shade, very strong shade here, and actually here there will be a little bit cast shadow. It's gonna be dark, another cast shadow there, and then this is gonna be dark. So now when I hold my pencil, when I do shading, I often hold it in the farthest from the tip rather than closer to the tip. It's a little bit easier to be having control of your lines. When it's closer, when you handle it, when you hold the pencil closer to the tip, it's a bit easier to get stronger. If you want to be lighter, it's easy to hold the pencil towards the end, a little bit like you would do with the brush. Then this part goes. Once you have a drawing like this, once you have the basic structure of the ear, that's the time you can start to put yourself. You can go a little bit, improvise a little more, and instead of stuck too much to the reference image, and then we can continue shading. So now the shading is up to you, the type of shading you like to do. Some people like cross etching. In my case, I do a combination of cross etching and just lines. I also use a little bit the size of the pencil in order to get some sort of shade like this. I'm using just a simple number 2 pencil. Just a second. Okay. And you can use a white eraser. You can use the eraser which is in the pencil. Oftentimes it tends to smudge the pencil. Let's see how does it do here. If I cancel, for instance, the structure line, it's doing pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to go a little stronger on the lines, just because I like to do that, and then we can continue our shading. Yeah, this is pretty much done. I usually, in this case, I want to just make a separation between the ear and the rest of the paper. It's just something I like to do. Of course, if you are drawing the head, it's not good to do that, but in this case we are just drawing the individual ear. Just like to do this kind of shading. And actually, in order to render, I'm going to actually go over the ear, which may sound strange for other people, but the idea is that in this way there will be a little more contrast, and I will reinforce the shadow, the stronger value shadow, and if necessary at the end I will go over with a little bit of eraser in order to put a little bit of highlights. Here I'm cross-hatching a little bit. I'm going to give a little more volume to this part, so make it a little round, because this is gonna be in the shade, this part right here. I'm using a very basic paper. Essentially, is the paper they use for printing. As far as it goes for paper, you start from simple paper, just like printing paper, until you really feel that you want to upgrade and do a different kind of paper. But the point is, until you don't have any thoughts about paper, until you don't have any thoughts about the pencil you're using, any thoughts about the eraser, that means you are not ready to upgrade to a different kind of paper or eraser or pencil. Things goes natural, they develop natural. When you start to feel that you need a different paper, like a more paper that has more tooth or more rough paper, it will come. And then even there is a moment where you can become even more sensitive to the fact that that there is in the paper, even the printing paper, there is a difference between the one side and the other side of the paper. One is smoother, the other one is rougher. So there is a moment that you become even more sensitive to something like that. But until it's not the case, just don't worry about it. Things will come natural. Everything comes natural. Okay, we'll do a little more rendering, a little bit more cross-hatching. a little bit of shadow here. And then it's up to you. You can even use a little bit of the fingers. Some people use the fingers. I use a lot the finger, but in this case I'm enjoying doing it. And then there are blenders you can buy. They essentially they fulfill the role of the finger, but in the case of the blenders, there are different sizes of blenders, because there are parts which the finger is too big to get into. It depends on the size of the drawing. If it's a big drawing, you can use your finger, but if it's small, then you may need to use a blender if you like to do that. So again, for the shading is up to you. What kind of shading? This is a different exercise, but there is shading with just simple lines, or you can cross it. And there are different ways in which you can cross, and then you can also use, as I said, the side of the pencil. You can do some sort of a gradient shape. Let's go back to our here. So that's how you just keep on coming back to the drawing and to the shading, and so you keep adding and adding until you are good to go. So now there are different levels where you can, or refinement. In this case, I'm not really concerned so much about the rendition. It's just I want to give you an idea how to draw the hair. But this can be refined and refined more, and as much as you want. You go a little more over the ear, making a little darker uniformly. So because I already have the lines and the shading which I did before, whenever I go on top, I just reinforce what is already there. And then if you want, you can start to put a little bit of highlights. You just erase a little bit certain parts. And that's about it. As I said, you can spend more or less time. It's up to you. And we will do a little more drawings. The main thing is to really observe the hair and to try to, as I did, is good to define the main shapes. So in other words, you don't get confused by the main value, the many values that are in the ear. You just focus on the main lines and you just reproduce them. So the exercise is essentially to really look, taking the time to just look, because we really don't spend so much time looking. So drawing is an opportunity to look, and in this case is to draw and to reproduce artistically what you have seen. And so this is drawing with references. We will have a discussion a little bit drawing with reference or by what is called imagination a little later. But the main way in which I draw is mainly through reference, because I like to look and to draw what I look. Thank you for watching. See you next time.